this is an extraordinary situation, really. Aside from it being a huge pleasure, Alfredo, having you with us on the Family Business Voice, and you too, Farida. So Alfredo from Bolzano, Italy, Farida from Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Thank God for these kinds of technologies, especially today. We are very grateful that it's possible to all connect together in these very trying times. It is an extraordinary situation, and we are very fortunate that you both have taken out the time to talk to us about what COVID-19, the corona pandemic, means for family businesses. So aside from, of course, us all being kind of trying to deal with the situation with more or less common sense, I think it would be really beneficial for us to hear from both of you from a geographical perspective how the situation is currently feeling at your end. Maybe, Alfredo, you can give us a little bit of an update for you from Italy, of course, which we understand has been suffering for a very long time now already from the seriousness of the situation. Give us a bit of an update maybe on how you are perceiving the current situation of this pandemic and what it's caused.
Yes, well, the situation is quite dramatic because Italy is the second hit country in the world after China. We have, as of today, 35,700 people who got infected with this, and we are having lots of people passing away every day because of this disease. Yesterday, almost 500 people passed away just because of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. So the situation is very serious. The country, as most of you already know, has been locked in completely. Most of the businesses have been shut down. So we are really in an emergency situation, and we have not yet reached the peak of the curve.
So quite a dramatic situation for you there out in Italy. Not surprising. As you said, we know it's been hit the fastest and the soonest after China. Farida, at your end in Dubai, what is the situation like? What is the feeling? What is the sentiment in the market, and how are people reacting?
Well, of course, it's like everywhere else. There is a lot of insecurity. There is a lot of confusion about what this means. I have to say that we are very grateful for the response of the government so far here. I feel that they are taking proportionate measures. The infection rate here is still relatively mild, I would say. But I have to say that the government is reacting in a very strategic, very structured, very organized way, which I think is the only way you can respond to this situation. They have closed down schools. We have most public spaces where big gatherings are possible are also closed or not accessible. And I do feel we are inching towards perhaps not a complete lockdown, but certainly to a more kind of strict social distancing situation. Many companies are practicing social distancing. So a lot of people have now, and you can notice with the traffic that they work from home. This morning I was speaking to a local businessman, and he has a couple of businesses, and one of his businesses is in the laundry business. And he said his numbers are 50% down, and the category are suits. So there's no more suits to be cleaned because people are not going to the office. So you can see how it has impacted it. You know, and it's also, as a person, like you notice the change in the air. There's a different atmosphere. People live differently. People react differently. You go to the supermarket. I have to say most supermarkets are still quite well stocked. So I feel the frenzy buying or the panic buying has not really happened here that much. Mm-hmm. Maybe in smaller locations, but not in the main supermarkets. But, you notice when you go to the supermarket, people are very wary of getting in each other's way. So I would say that just to describe the overall hesitance to be out in the open, which then obviously also translates to the business community very much.
So it's interesting. You both mentioned also the reactions of the public, etc. And Farida, you in particular also mentioned the reaction of the government. And so for us here, we're currently in Switzerland, where the state of emergency has just been declared. The country is officially going into lockdown, and people are asked, and even it's being enforced by law, to self-isolate now, which is clearly shifted the atmosphere for us here, shifted the perspective. But so there's the reaction of the individual person in society. There's the reaction of government, which in some countries we are more fortunate than in others when it comes to that kind of competence. There's the infrastructure of healthcare that matters here a lot. But then there's also the side of how this impacts the private sector and how the private sector has reacted. So maybe to start from the positive perspective here as well, like I feel like I have seen over the last few weeks some businesses react in the most extraordinarily generous fashion. And I think this bears mentioning. For instance,
Yes.
I know that LVMH has stopped perfume production and dedicated the resources to creating hand sanitizer, for instance. Do you guys have any other examples that I think it's worth mentioning these businesses here as well,
Yes.
because I think they're making an extraordinary contribution to a very complicated situation. Alfredo, does anyone come to mind in particular that stands
Yes,
out to you?
absolutely. Here as well, I mean, family businesses have reacted, I would say, quickly, strongly, and in a very altruistic way, as it's typical of their one of the typical features. So, for example, Berlusconi, he donated the 10 million euros in order to some hospitals to create some intensive care units. The same did Caprotti. He is the family leader of Esselunga, who is a retail supermarket chain. And there are many others like this. Not only that, other companies, and I speak, for example, of some family firms here in the territory, transformed their production. For example, here, Oberalp&Saleva, which is a company led by the Oberauch family and working in the production of technical clothes for sports. They changed their production, they converted their production, and now they are producing facial masks and protection suits. So this is a way to which they are helping, to face this important need, where Italy is suffering particularly from that need, because we actually don't have internal national provider. So we really rely on outside producers. And unfortunately, this pandemic has disrupted the supply chain, the global chains. And so everything is more complicated. Overall, I would say that if we look overall at the economy and at the society, even more at large, this pandemic, this crisis, has forced the society to make a big jump forward into the future. Because I think it has accelerated many processes. It has speeded up many processes, many change processes that were ongoing. And now we had to do this all of a sudden in just a few weeks.
Absolutely.
So, for example, I think it was mentioned before by Farida, the smart working possibilities. Here, many companies, many universities have moved to smart working. Smart working, before we were thinking about allowing this to a small proportion of employees, only to a small proportion of employees, and we were planning and thinking how could we do that. Now most of the people do this, and it's working very well. I would say, because most of those companies that were able to embrace this, to digitalize in some way their business model, have been very effective in doing that.
Yeah.
Another important thing is that this pandemic, in my view, has also led people to rediscover the power and potential of technology, so related to that, but also to it has changed in some way also our perception of consumer behaviors, because of course now, for example, people don't buy anymore, they don't go anymore to restaurants, they don't go, they are scared of going and buy food in shops. And so most of these companies have changed their model, and now they do home delivery. And of course, it changes dramatically also the way we do social interactions. As Farida mentioned, now people are really scared about, getting too close to each other. And this has induced several changes also in the way you interact with many stakeholders that you have in your business organization. So overall, I think there has been a cultural switch, and this cultural switch is disrupting and will continue to disrupt many industries and many jobs and professions. And I think these jobs, professions, and industry will have to evolve necessarily in order to be consistent with this new context. Otherwise, they will be out. So those who won't be able to adapt to the new context will inevitably suffer and have big losses. But on the other hand, I also think that this has opened some new opportunities. And probably when we will all in the world, when we will win the war against this virus, probably we will be in a better and more innovative world.
No, I fully agree with you, and maybe just to follow up and to build on that, in a way, to me it feels like disruption on top of disruption, because we were already I feel we are just entering the 21st century now. That's kind of my feeling. I feel 2020 to me was a sort of a threshold. I feel that the first 20 years of the 20th century, we were kind of identifying what are going to be the trends, what are going to be the elements that are going to influence us. And now I feel we have more clarity with regards to what the technologies are that are disrupting us, how they are going to disrupt us. That the environment suddenly became such a big topic. We did not expect that to kind of, exponentially increase. And so we were already, as a world, as a global marketplace, we were already facing this disruption. And now this coronavirus kind of added a disruption on top of the disruption. And I fully agree with you that in a way, the ingenuity of business people is now going to lie with those that can at the same time crisis manage, risk manage, and innovate. And I think if you somehow get those three elements, aspects in the right sequence and in the right space in your business, that's when you might get out of this as a stronger business. The reality, of course, on the ground, we see that I've seen kind of a split between businesses that definitely are hitting a wall already now, which obviously is sadly probably quite early, because we don't know how long this is going to go. So if you hit a wall now, you do have a big problem. And then there are others who perhaps were more conservative in how they manage their resources, have a possibility to pivot quickly, and those are capable of taking those, let's say, more altruistic emergency measures, such as not to lay people off. I mean, you see in the region, in the wider region, you already see jobs being reduced. So there is that wave is coming. But then you see family businesses, as you described beforehand, kind of trying to be as responsible as they always were, because they see themselves as part of an ecosystem, and that ecosystem will have a long-term life after the virus.